So I'm working on an O-scale diorama, and for the diorama, of course, I need to add some figures. And in the past, I've used Prizer figures, which are pretty good, and you can paint them up and weather them to look pretty decent. They're nice. But with all the new 3D printing that's out there, I wanted to use something with a little bit more detail. And Mini Prints is a company that creates a lot of details in all different scales, from objects to people to animals to little oddities. And they've got a great range to their line of products. They've got a sense of humor, they've got stuff for prototypical railroading, you name it, check it out. But one of the great things they have is a selection of figures, and they keep scanning people in at various train shows and so forth. So if you're at a train show where they'll be, you can get yourself scanned in. And last year, or this year at the Amherst show, George Sellios was scanned, or I think he went to see George and scanned him in George's shop and at his layout. So that's what I'm going to do. Of course, if George Sellios is available, I want him on my diorama, and we're going to paint him today. And painting figures sounds difficult, and it is. It's an art form unto itself, especially if you get into the high-level 1/35th scale modeling, military models and soldiers and so forth. But if you treat it like a detail part, like an oil drum or a chimney, we can make it a little simpler and not have to go too crazy with the painting and still get some good results. So that's what we're going to try to do with this one and a couple of other ones from Mini Prints. So these are the figures we're going to work with. We've got George here and these two other guys. Now look at the detail. Look how thin the brim of that hat is, and how detailed the folds of all the clothes are. So that's what's great about this 3D printing. So what we first need to do, though, is clean up all these supports. These are the supports that are needed when the figure prints. 3D printing is printed upside down in this direction, so you need these supports when you get to overhangs and undercuts like his arms there. So that's what those are for. But they're easily removed with some nice flush cutters. So just carefully, gently cut them away. And when you get close to the actual part, just be aware. And sometimes they just pull off like that, which is nice. We'll leave the base for now, so we could use it to stick it to a surface to work on him. This one doesn't need any supports removed. Oh, it does. In the back here, see the hat right there? These two tiny little pieces. So we're going to be a little careful with those. We don't want to wreck the hat. If there was a little piece under his hat, we could just take a file. One pass usually does it for something really thin. Maybe. So you may have your own way of mounting something to paint on it. I just kind of use a paper plate, and I use my 3M transfer tape to make a sticky surface. And then we could just get these guys right here so we can spray them with primer before we start painting. So I've got these guys primed with black spray paint, and I tried to get as much even coverage as I could. And then I've got George here on this parts holder. There's a piece of clay here, so he sticks on the end, and now we can work on him freely. So I think it's best to start with the pants. So I'm going to do a denim color. I'm using Archive X paint. This is Alliance Blue. And I'm using a 0 brush for the size of the brush. Yeah, it's a 0, which is a good size for what we're doing right now. So these come off, which is great. So now I could switch caps and work on this guy. And we're going to give him some khaki pants, and I'm going to use light earth. So just be aware of his waistline and the shirt where the two separate, so you don't paint the pants color. So this color is a little thin. You can still see the black, so we'll probably have to do a second coat. So for this guy, we'll give him some gray pants. I'm using ILM Surface Gray, and it's one of the colors they used on all the Star Wars models for the ships and the Death Star. way back when. And it's definitely worth doing a couple of these at a time so you could let each one dry while you're working on the next one. Because if you're working next to wet paint with another color, it's always just going to get you into trouble. So if you just keep switching out and letting things dry properly, you'll have less of a hard time. So this is light reefer gray, and I'm going to do that for George's shirt. So I'm not worrying about getting paint on his hands or his arms, which will be a skin tone later. So we'll just worry about the small stuff later. Just cover the big surfaces first. So we're using Coach Green for this guy's shirt, and it's a short sleeve shirt, so make sure we don't paint his arms, his forearms. So for his shirt, I'm going to use SP Daylight Red. So I'm going to use Roof Brown on all three of the figures, but in different elements of each outfit. So we're going to just share the color. So for this guy, we'll paint his hat Roof Brown. And now we could use Roof Brown on this guy's shoes. So we don't have to do a color change with the brush sometimes. So this will just always just speeds things up. As long as you have enough variety of color in the clothing, we could share a few colors like this. Again, I'm not too worried if I'm going to get it on the skin parts of his face, because we can go back later. This is SP Larklight Gray. So this gets a little tricky. We want to do his hair. Of course, he's got a hat on. So we just need a glimpse of hair right under the hat. So just going to shove the brush under the hat. I'm using a light earth color here for sandy blonde hair. And then of course some in the back. So I've got two shades for flesh tones here. One is Aurora Pink. This is from Archive X. It's a little pink, but it might work a little too, cotton pink, cotton candy pink. And this is Light Flesh from AK, which is a nice muted flesh tone. So I'm going to start with this one first, I think. And let's start with the guy with the beard, because we want to get to his beard too, but we want to do the skin first. I'm switching brushes to a 5 here, 5/0. So now we can paint some details like this belt. And again, you want to use your very small brush. I'm going to get some Roof Brown. And you got to hold this really steady. You could use the main holder here. I don't know if that's going to make a difference for me. Either way, I got to keep it kind of pinned to the ground, so I got a nice fix on them. You can see we have to touch up some of the green shirt there. It's got some flesh tone on his shirt. But right now we'll just focus on the belt. Looks like the shirt's covering it there. Now, well, let's just make that belt. And we'll make a belt loop right there. There's probably one under his hand, so we don't need that one. And on the back, there's probably one in the middle. One there, and then there's one right here. So I've got green back on the brush. I'm going to cover that little mess I just made there. So I'm looking for spots that need to be covered with green, and you can see the black under his shirt. It's not too big a deal. I could probably leave it alone, but since I've caught it, I might as well get it. I've got the small brush out. And then around his right hand, you can get some of this shirt color there. So let's see if George has a belt here. I don't think he does. The shirt seems to go over his waist. So I'm going to just touch up some of the blue from his jeans. Now we can touch up his shirt a little bit. I'm not that concerned about all the little black, all the black showing through. Eventually we will put a wash over this, so it's going to work in our benefit anyway. But the other colors, the flesh tones and the mixing colors of the different fabrics, I don't want to overlap, so that's where we got to touch up. So now we've got each figure painted in solid colors, each pair of pants, each shirt, hats, shoes, and you could leave them as is if you wanted to, and of course if you're a better painter than me for figure painting, you would take the pants and you would apply different shades of blues and grays and create shadows in all the folds of the fabric. But that's not the kind of painting I can do on a figure, so I kind of cheat, and my cheat is to dry brush it next and then apply a black wash. So that's what we're going to do. And to me that's good enough. Of course, if you want to take your painting to another level, there are lots of serious figure painting videos out there. Check those out. But we're going to do something that's just good enough to get on the layout or the diorama, and let's do that now. So to get some good dry brushing done, you need a good brush. You can use a 1/2 inch flat brush if that's what you have, something like this, which is very good. But there are actual dry brushing brushes out there. This is from the Army Painter. It's called the Mighty Dry Brush, and you can see what a different kind of setup it is. And the idea is that you don't want to see actual brush strokes. So with this round kind of smooth, soft shape, you're less likely to get that, and you'll get more coverage at the same time. So we're going to try this one. And I'm also using Army Painter's matte white. You want as flat a white paint as you can get. And when we're dry brushing, we're always putting brush on our paint and taking almost all of it off until we get just sort of a fade of what's on the brush. It's better to start light than dark. You can always go back and add some more. And when you get to this kind of consistency, you can start. So I'm going to start on the back of the figure in case I really screw it up. And when I dry brush, I kind of start in the air and kind of wait till I make contact with the object, because otherwise the first moment of contact is going to be too much paint. So you just kind of lightly, I'll do it from the side so you can see what I'm doing. I'm actually not hitting it, and then make contact. And then you can start to see some highlights happen. So if you do too much white, I'm not too concerned about it because we're going to do a wash afterwards. It's kind of funny dry brushing the man who mastered dry brushing. So I'm going to do a second dry brush with SP Lark Light Gray. And what I want to do is sort of kill the brightness of the white, which is highlighting things for me, but sometimes it's too much. So I'm using my flat brush now just to try something else. And this is a way of also adding some other shadows and highlights that is part of our cheat, whereas a real figure painter would paint these in individually and in different ways of blending, almost the way you make an oil painting. But we're not doing that. So I'm going back, taking off more paint. So here's another part of the cheat. This is another dry brushing, except now we're going to do individual colors. I've got this green from his shirt, and I'm going to blend a little bit there. And now I've got some darker green and lighter green, even though it's the same green, on his shirt. And we're going to do the same thing with his pants. We've got all those highlights, but of course it looks like he's been rolling in the mud. And I'm dry brushing just the pants. So now we got a little more variety in the pants, but they don't look so dirty. Some of the red. You have to be a little careful because you don't want to hit the other colors. But now we've sort of created a bit of layering, so we see through the different colors, and that's what's going to give us some shadow and shade and really highlight more of the edges. So now you can see there's a shadow under the sleeve and the armpit, behind the beer can or soda can, and it just starts to create more depth by adding this extra step of dry brushing with color. So after we've done all that gray and white dry brushing, we've kind of mucked up the skin tones. So now we'll just go back, hit them again to clean them up. And they don't have to be perfect because we don't mind a little shadow and a little depth and variety in the skin tone. But we also just don't want them to look like they've been rolling in the dirt. So another thing we can do to help highlight some of the details on these figures is sort of what I've done with some HO vehicles, where you score lines down panels and roofs of or hoods of cars, and you could do the same thing with these figures. With a nice sharp knife, I'm just going to gently cut a line and separate the arm from the shirt, because we're going to put a wash here next, and it'll help draw in the wash and create some separation between certain parts. I mean, you can always do a little bit more. The figures are so well detailed already, I don't really need to do it. But I'm just curious to see what happens if I do. I'm going to put a little definition right there. Sorry if that hurts, buddy. Ouch. So this is the last step, and I'm going to use Tamiya Panaline Accent Color. It's panel liner. It's a very thin, viscous black wash. It comes with a brush, which is great. And I'm going to try not to get it on the flesh tones. I actually want to leave them as is, which is why we went through all the trouble to dry brush, color, dry brush, and then repaint the flesh tones, because they really wouldn't be that dirty or shaded as the clothing. So I'm going to just start underneath, and you can see how the arms pop out now, and then the wrinkles in the shirt get much more defined. And if you put too much, you could see there's a lot there. Empty your brush, and you could draw it off with the brush. This will get kind of sucked back into the bristles of the brush if it's empty. If you do too much, and I'm trying to steer clear of the flesh tones. If I get a little bit in a shading, that's okay, because now you can see the arms pop out even more. And we'll just go down the pants. Again, too much, just go back, take it off your brush, and draw it off like that. I kind of break my rule about this wash. I want to see the eyes and the eye sockets, so I might just hit them, try to get off as much as I can. And then just go in and then take it back off, try to remove as much as I can. So I've applied the wash to most of the figures, and what happens is the flesh tones again get a little murky, so I'm just going to go back and repaint those, but after that I think we might be done. So one last time, we'll get some of these flesh tones back on. So I hope you give this technique a try. Again, it's kind of a good enough technique. It's for those of us who aren't figure painters, but we still want to put some nice figures on our layouts or dioramas. So give it a try. And please check out Mini Prints. They've got some of the most innovative, clever products to come around in the hobby in a long time. And thanks to our Patreon supporters. If you want to see more behind the scenes stuff of what we're doing here, sneak peeks to kits we're working on, and an exclusive video that we only show on Patreon, join us on Patreon. And check out fosskits.com. You might find a kit you might need or like for your layout. Thanks.